Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our first ever Lunchtime webinar in New Zealand. I'm Katie, your Education USA advisor in Auckland. Today, we are lucky to have with us experts in the field of outdoor adventure education. I'm going to introduce all of them to you before we get going. First up, we have Professor Jerry Isaak, who acts as the chair of Expeditionary Studies at the State University of New York, Plattsburgh. Originally from British Columbia, he received a Master in Outdoor Education at the University of Edinburgh and has worked as an expedition leader and guide in Canada, USA, Morocco, Scotland, Austria, and the Arctic. Also joining us today, we have Dr. Michael Gassner, who's calling in from Oregon State University, Cascades. He received a PhD in Education Studies with a focus on recreation, parks, and leisure from the University of Minnesota. He brings a wealth of knowledge from being involved in outdoor adventure education for the last 15 years. He's lived and worked in the USA, East Malaysia, and Hong Kong, as well as extensive travel throughout Asia and Southeast Asia as well. In addition, we have Raeann Halley, who works in international admissions at the State University of New York, Plattsburgh. Obtaining both her bachelor's and master's degree at SUNY Plattsburgh, she's an expert in life on campus. Not only does she review applications for prospective international students, but she also does outreach to make students aware of opportunities around the school as well. We expect this session to last 30 minutes with time for questions and answers at the end. I'll let you go ahead and kick it off then, if you wouldn't mind. Professor Jerry Isaak.
Well, hello everyone, and thanks for participating in this webinar. It's a privilege to represent SUNY Plattsburgh and along with Dr. Michael Gassner, the field of outdoor adventure education in the United States. Yeah, we're looking forward to chatting a little bit about our field and some of the options at our universities as well as at programs beyond. And so I hope you can all see the presentation that we have here, and I think this should be made available to you later if you're not able to see it now. We have information, our contact information is on this slide, and as was mentioned, I work at State University of New York in Plattsburgh, and Michael is at Oregon State University Cascades campus. And I don't expect many of you to know where either of those places are, so I put a little map here so you can see. Plattsburgh's in the upper right. We're in the northeast corner. We're at the tail end of the Appalachian Mountains, the north end. We're about an hour south of Montreal, Canada, and we're several hours from Boston and about equal distance to New York City. And the area that our campus is on is right next to Lake Champlain, and we're surrounded by mountains and rivers and lakes. And Michael, maybe you want to say a little bit about the location for OSUCascades.
Cascades is on the northwest corner of the U.S. We're about 20 minutes from Three Sisters Wilderness area, which is a pretty extensive wilderness area with some glaciated peaks. It's an area that's full of rivers for both boating and fly fishing, lots of mountain biking, and all kinds of recreation in general. And we're enjoying a very nice spring at the moment. It's all yours, Jerry.
All right. So our presentation, it'll be fairly brief, and we'll leave lots of time for questions, and hopefully we've done enough to give you an overview of what we'll have in store. And so we'll start out with just talking about what does it mean to study outdoor adventure education and the variety of programs that we have. We'll look at undergraduate study and what I'm calling the spectrum of outdoor programs, the whole range of what we have. And then we'll talk about some related fields, outdoor education, outdoor adventure, outdoor industry programs that or areas where you could study and or work. And then the possibilities for employment, both in the United States and in New Zealand or Australia. And I'll talk a little bit about the outdoor difference, what makes, I think what makes me passionate, and I think what makes Michael and others passionate as well about our field. And then finally, we'll have time for question and answer. So in the United States, I call this outdoor adventure education, but you could have called it many other different things. It could have been outdoor recreation. Our program at SUNY Plattsburgh is called Expeditionary Studies. There are programs in outdoor recreation, and the program at OSUCascades is Tourism and Outdoor Leadership. So there's a broad range of names, and they all have to do with outdoor education and recreation, but they can range quite a bit in the focus. They also range quite a bit in geographic location, and as our two presenters, myself and Michael, represent programs that are on opposite sides of the country but have similar focuses and have similar goals, but they're quite different. Our program, we are in the northeast corner of the United States, one of the most populated areas of the country, but in one of the, we're next to the Adirondack Mountains, and in an incredible wilderness area in upstate New York. And OSUCascades, as an example, is in Central Oregon, and they're not very far from the greater Portland area, and as well as they're in the city of Bend, but they have amazing wilderness opportunities in some of the more rugged and remote wilderness areas in the Pacific Northwest. Michael, maybe if you want to talk a little bit about some of your experience in Minnesota or other programs that you know about in Colorado, and just kind of give an overview on types of places where students could study and what they might find interesting there.
Yeah. Okay. Some of the bigger programs in the United States right now, or more well-known programs, are, of course, SUNY Plattsburgh. Our program here in Bend, Oregon. There's also a very good program at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. It has both undergraduate, master's, and PhD programs as well. And there is some programs also in the state of Minnesota in the central region, but it really, if you're shopping around for a program, I think part of it is geographical area. Certainly in the Midwest, you're not going to run across as many mountains, but on either coast you will, or in Colorado. If you're a boater or a mountaineer, I think that those interests will drive you towards a particular direction. And from that point, I think, is look at who's working there and whether you kind of align with them as far as a personality. Whether the profile, for example, that Jerry has on his website, or I have, if a particular professor's background kind of interests you as well, that's a driver too. And then, of course, whether, what the costs are. And that's best answered by the admission folks. But certainly out here in the West Coast, we're more driven by boating and mountaineering per se. Those are the two big aspects of our program, as well as eco and adventure tourism. That's from me.
Good, thanks, Michael. The PowerPoint slide says number of programs. It's difficult to quantify the academic programs, and I don't know exactly how many. What I do know is that there are literally hundreds of outdoor recreation programs that are co-curricular at universities in the United States and universities and colleges. So it's quite a significant component of college life, but it's a much smaller fraction of typical majors or minors. So you should be able to track down many of them really through fairly brief online searches. As I mentioned, major or minors. Our program in particular, we have a small faculty and are only able to do a major. We can't offer a minor as much as we would like to, but there are several programs where you can study and take it as a minor, so you might major in something else. Maybe it's English or engineering or mathematics, and then you could minor in an outdoor leadership program or adventure education. And then likewise, if you wanted to major for our program, you could double major, so you could take Expeditionary Studies and English or Fine Arts or something like that, and you could also minor. So in many ways it's not a limiting, but it's quite a unique area of study. The spectrum of outdoor, before we slide ahead, I wanted to look back at, we'll go one more, the spectrum of outdoor education programs. What I mean by that is some of the programs, well, the range, if I could say, on one end of the spectrum, we'll have programs that are more theoretical and might spend more time in a classroom, or maybe they might focus more on environmental issues and science education or outdoor education. And then the other end of that spectrum would be programs that focus more on technical skill development, learning to rock climb and ice climb and paddle. And the reason why I call it a spectrum and it's not so much any type of ladder is that it's really more of a mix. So some programs will have components of one and not as much of the other, and so you'll get a range. And I think for a student that's looking to come into one of those programs, it's going to be important for you to contact that specific program and get a feel for what they're interested in and see if that matches for you, because not every program is going to match the goals of each student. So I think it's going to be really important, if you're a student that's looking into a program, particularly from overseas, try and talk to the faculty and if possible, talk with current students. I know for our program, we try and connect any students that are interested to our current students or alumni, so that you can really hear from them, what their experience is, what they're interested in pursuing as a career, and just what their experience as a student is. So some of the options, if you're interested in outdoor education more as working in K through 12 education, or even in higher education, you'll have a range of programs that might focus more on that. You could have programs in adventure tourism, and some of that might be guiding, and some of it more like would be towards management or entrepreneurship. And then also you'll have recreation management, and some of that overlaps a little bit more maybe with parks and recreation. And so there's a whole range of program options, and I think it's important for students to look into that and really to understand what it is, because not all programs are going to have the same focus. So we'll look at some of those in particular for students that might be interested. Outdoor education options would be perhaps more school-based, so you might work in a school, and an elementary school or in a high school, and you could combine that potentially with teacher education. You might work at a not-for-profit organization. Some examples of that would be programs that work in science education, winter science education. They do maybe it's conservation work or ecology studies, and other programs might be like Outward Bound and National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS, and those programs, they might do extended trips in wilderness areas and do leadership education. So outdoor adventure would be another area of study. I think that might be a program that focuses more in the way that our program and Michael's program does on tourism, outdoor leadership. I also put Outward Bound, and you could put NOLS in here as well at this stage, because there is quite a bit of overlap, and so you're not going to have something where it just focuses on one. So you might have these adventure programs, and the itinerary might look similar, but the goals and the desired outcomes could be different. So for our program in particular, we focus on expedition leadership, but I would describe our program as primarily a liberal arts degree, where students learn the skills to be competent outdoor professionals, but they're also getting a classical liberal arts degree, where we focus on critical thinking and a breadth of education as well as a depth of thinking. And then finally, outdoor industry. It's a huge industry, and I have a few slides up later in the presentation on possibilities for work in this field. It might be manufacturing, it might be retail, or in the ski industry, which is also a large industry in New Zealand. Michael, do you have anything to add on those three fields? I know it's kind of a broad topic. I just wanted to give students an understanding of what some of the options are.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd say from our perspective here out on the West Coast, and from recent graduates of ours that have come out of our program, there appears to be a lot of students out here, I don't know what it is or why it is, that end up starting their own businesses. So there seems to be quite a entrepreneurial spirit out here with our graduates working in the outdoor industry. Some of them have gone into designing their own sit skis, for example, through some funding that they've acquired, and others have started a mirage of other businesses. So if that's also another avenue people can go that they don't realize sometimes is not necessarily where you work for a manufacturing, retail, or ski industry. You might end up having a desire to start your own type of business, since it is such a big growth industry. And that's really the only thing I would add at this point.
Yeah, that's right. That's really interesting. I know one of our recent alumni has combined a double major in expeditionary studies with engineering, and he designs holds and holds for climbing walls as well as climbing wall structures. So one of the things I like about our field is that you can really think outside the box, and I often encourage our students to take out a double minor if they're interested in entrepreneurship. Business skills are going to be really important, and learning accounting, or even just how to do business communications, all those types of things are going to be really important as well. And I think, are good things that we'll emphasize, and where we can draw on expertise from other fields within our universities and institutions. So employment outlook, I know that's often a big question, is what type of employment opportunities are there. This information comes from a 2012 study that was put out by the Outdoor Industry Association, and it's looking at the numbers of people employed in the United States, as well as the consumer spending. So this slide talks about consumer spending, $646 billion, and this is quite a broad net that they're using to capture this data. But outdoor recreation is a huge industry in the United States, and as Michael mentioned, it's not necessarily going to be in something that you might traditionally understand. So there's lots of scope for entrepreneurs, as well as working within maybe more traditional industries. I'm just going to blow this slide up here a little bit for myself. So the number of people employed by outdoor recreation in the United States is a little over 6 million. And this would include a whole range of fields, and so you can see some of the other industries where it's compared with. They're trying to make the case that it contributes quite a bit to the economy and needs a little bit more attention. So this is specifically from an industry association, but I think it gives you an understanding and perhaps a little bit surprising of the impact of outdoor recreation within the United States. Here's a bit of a numbers breakdown, again from that same study in 2012, and looking at what people spend on some of this equipment or trip-related sales. And I don't expect you to be too interested in the numbers, but essentially it's a big number, and all that is to say that it's a fairly big deal. And so the programs that have arisen at universities and colleges in the United States are in part trying to respond to some of these industry trends. And so you'll see programs that might have some unique aspects. I know there's some programs in Colorado that are specifically focused on working with students to be ski area managers or work as ski technicians and that sort of thing. So you'll get programs like ours, which are liberal arts, and then some programs that can be quite focused on a specific aspect of outdoor industry. So this slide's a little bit maybe for Raeann to talk about some of the different options for international students coming to study in the United States, and what options they have for employment during full-time study, and if they're interested in perhaps staying on and working after their degree is completed.
You want me to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, if you want to jump in. Here, I'll move this up so you can see.
Okay.
Here.
All right. Okay, so if you're interested in working on campus as an international student, I actually personally don't really deal much with international students once they're currently enrolled, but we do have an international student advisor here. His name is Colby, and that's his full job, is to help what they're allowed to do in terms of working, how many hours they're allowed to work, and all of that. So that's kind of one of our strengths here, is we have a great global education office, and it's fully staffed with people who are here to support you and give you all of the ins and outs and what you're allowed to do as far as employment being an international student. So unfortunately, I don't have like specific answers for you, but they're definitely accessible for you here.
So could you tell us, maybe before you head off, maybe tell us a little bit more about, do you know any of the options for students that might be interested in staying in the United States after they've completed their degree?
Again, that's a Colby thing. I really don't know much.
So Colby's not here. I did put some of this information here on about optional practical training, and talking about, so the United States government has specific programs where you could continue on and where your job might be directly related to your major, your area of study, and so that would be something that you'd be just wanted to put up there, that it's a possibility, but you'd be here I am. You'd be wise to contact the specific school and talk with their international department about some of the options and possibilities for you. All right.
Thanks.
So that's the end of our brief presentation. So I just wanted to give you all an opportunity for question and answer. I know you have options of typing in questions, and we can hopefully answer them. You might have something specific for myself or Michael, and or something more general. So yeah, look forward to reading your questions.
All right, thank you to all of our presenters today. We have received already a few questions from those who are attending the call. And the first one I see actually comes from Stephen. And his question is, how well recognized are U.S. outdoor education qualifications overseas?
Well, it depends where overseas. So if you're speaking specifically to New Zealand, New Zealand would have some national governing body certifications that would be more similar to the United Kingdom, and Michael, you can jump in if you know something a bit more about this. But there are some certifications which might be more widely recognized. So, for example, certification through the American Mountain Guides Association would be part of the same international body as the New Zealand Mountain Guides Association. However, that's quite a high level of mountaineering training. For most of our students, the training will be at a lower level, and it would depend often on the specific certification, if it's paddling or if it's rock climbing, how well recognized that is. So I'm assuming you'd be interested in working back in New Zealand or Australia. Michael, do you have any specific thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, I think it's the certification schemes in New Zealand and the UK are much more structured and long-standing than the ones in the United States. However, I think it is discipline-specific. For example, at SUNY and other places in the US, you can certainly get Paddle Sports North America certifications, which are analogous to BCU certifications that would be recognized worldwide. I think you have to pick and choose which certifications you want. Having said that, I think the overall value of a degree in the U.S. goes a long way overseas in a lot of places. I think that the value is more maybe in the degree itself than the individual certifications. As it is, the States doesn't really have a national governing body I think that maybe the most widely recognized certifications in the States have to do with wilderness first responders, backcountry medicine, and also what Jerry said, the American Mountain Guides Association would be recognized throughout the world.
Yeah, I think as what Michael was saying too, one other point would be that the value of the degree would be well recognized, and I know there are several well-regarded graduate programs in Australia and New Zealand within the field of outdoor education. One in particular at University of Otago in Dunedin has an excellent postgraduate program, so it could be an option for students if they came to study in the United States. You could return for further study in New Zealand, and yeah, I think you'd be well set up.
All right, thanks, guys. I have quite a few questions that have come in over the course of this week. We do have some schools that are out on their own outdoor education programs, so some of those students have kindly submitted some questions in advance. And I'll go ahead and read the first one. And he says, I'm really interested in outdoor education, but my parents want me to study economics or law. How can I convince them that this is a worthwhile field?
Michael?
I've tried to answer that question to my parents my whole life. And I think one of the best things you can do is take your parents on a trip outdoors. That'll solve some of the issues right there. The whole outdoor industry is not what it used to be. You know, for example, if you're living in New Zealand where this question comes from, take them up to Nelson and have them visit the Outward Bound School up there in Nelson, which is for many years voted one of the best places to work in New Zealand. That's one way to approach them. The outdoor industry has come to be a profession that's well respected in many parts of the world, where you can earn a good living wage and spend a lot of time outside. It's a very personal question. I think you have to approach your parents carefully because they're not going to stop being your parents. So that's my 2 cents worth on that one. Jerry?
Sure. Well, yeah, like Michael, I've had to answer that question myself, and I think in some ways there's that desire to somehow to be able to provide for a family in a stable career. But also, I think one of the points that I had up earlier in the slideshow about the outdoor difference, and I didn't really talk about it, was the fact that college is about more than just preparing for a job. It's I think there are so many experiences and interests and intellectual challenges that you will encounter and develop in yourself that the outdoor field can. I guess I'm stumbling around it because it's difficult to quantify and it is personal. One example would be that one of the programs that I attended as a student in Canada, I would say that probably about 50% of my classmates are currently working in the outdoor industry full-time. However, well over 95%, I would say, have outdoor adventure activities as a significant component of their life and will for the rest of their lives. And that's difficult to quantify, and I'm pretty sure that won't satisfy your parents. But I think that's something that's really significant to think about, that you will be gaining skills and experiences as well as relationships that will impact you for the rest of your life. And I'm not sure how many other programs, how many other departments could say that.
Agreed. It's truly a unique field of study, that's for sure. I have another question from Molly, who is on the call right now, and she's wondering, how much field experience would a student have while studying for this degree?
Well, it ranges broadly. So, as I mentioned, with kind of a spectrum, I think our program at SUNY Plattsburgh is probably on the high end of that. We have an immersion field semester, so all transferring or any first-year students that come with us, they have a block semester, and they will be have extensive field time right away in their first semester with us. So they take 17 credits. All of those are with our program. You'll do rock climbing, introduction and intermediate rock climbing. You'll do canoeing and sea kayaking and whitewater kayaking, backpacking trips, all that in your first semester. And then you still have 3.5 years with us where you do upper level courses. You'll have multiple expeditions that you're required to go on and trained for. So our program has a huge amount of field experience that you'll get, and we're very intentional about how we tier that field experience and how we prepare students throughout so that we can slowly step up the challenges that they'll experience. And so it'll range. And some programs might have a much more campus-based program. Michael, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what you guys do.
Ours is, as they say in Thailand, it's same but different. Ours is a little bit less field time based. Our students, the first couple of years, they will take a series of skills courses across the spectrum, and the longest trip they'll do out is about 8 days in their first 2 years. And then in the last 2 years, junior and senior, they'll kind of ramp up towards an immersion term or an immersion trimester where they'll spend approximately 6 weeks out on rivers and in mountains. Part of I think the distinction or the difference in the degrees, and this is across the U.S. and a lot of other universities too, is our program is intentionally focused with a fair amount of business courses so that students are able to, if they, for example, get tired of guiding, they can work their way. They have the skills on board to go into business. So on a spectrum, I think SUNY Plattsburgh has more field time than we do. And ours is maybe a little bit more theoretical based, but both contain an immersion term. And I think Jerry's perfectly correct in saying that it's a huge spectrum, and if the amount of field time is really important to you, then I think it's you can seek that out online. And there are some programs where you spend most of your university degree out, but then there are others that are on opposite ends of the spectrum too.
That's great, guys. Thank you for that. We have a related question from Sarah on the call right now, and she's wondering what level of outdoor experience you may require from students before they enroll. And we've had another one that's similar, is what are the prerequisites for the program in general?
You want me to take that?
Sure. Yeah, and then you can maybe speak a little bit about your program, and then I'll share ours.
Okay. The question was, what level of outdoor experience do we require from students before they enroll? And it's 0, really. It's a 4-year degree where you're not required to have certain outdoor qualifications or experience before you enroll in the program. And I would imagine that's the same at SUNY. I'll turn it over to you, Jerry, at this point.
Sure. Ours is the same, and the rationale for us is that if you were a student interested in an English degree or an engineering degree, you wouldn't be expected to come in with high levels of skills in engineering or English. You would need some basic levels, and so our admissions requirements are available online, as are OSUCascades, and every other university or college. You can find those online, but we don't have specific requirements. I think you would benefit from having previous experience, and we'd certainly encourage that, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, great. Thank you both for that. Our next question is geared probably towards Raeann, but our most common question is about scholarships and financial aid. So do your programs offer scholarships for international students, and could you please tell us about that?
Yes. So the average cost of attendance for an international student for SUNY Plattsburgh is $16,000 annually for just tuition. Then when you add in the room and board and all of that good stuff, it's about $30,000 a year. International students all qualify for scholarships ranging from $2,500 to $13,500 per year. As international students from New Zealand specifically, you would at least qualify for the $2,500. That would be a housing award. And then based on need, you would fill out a financial aid application and you could receive up to $5,000 per year depending on your need. And then the last component is merit-based scholarships. So depending on your academic record, your high school transcript, as well as SAT or ACT scores, you could earn up to a $6,000 merit scholarship award. So if you were to receive the $2,500 housing award, the $5,000 financial aid award, and the $6,000 merit award, that would be total $13,500 per year, and that would be the largest scholarship that you could receive here. And they are renewable for all 4 years.
How common would it be for a student to receive all of those scholarships?
It's relatively common. We see it quite a bit. I don't know the exact percentage, but it is fairly common. The merit scholarship doesn't go on a sliding scale. It's either $6,000 or nothing, and it's not too difficult to get. If you've done well in high school and done well on the SATs or ACTs, it isn't too difficult to get. If you want to check to see if you would be eligible for that based on your scores, that's right online on our international admissions page. There's a scholarship calculator link, and that's where you can enter in your average and your SAT or ACT scores to see if you would qualify for that.
Okay, great. And Dr. Gassner, sorry to put you on the spot, but do you have any extra information about Oregon State for international student scholarships?
Oh, I wish I had a Raeann here. No, I don't. No, the one unique thing about OSU Cascades is it is a branch campus of Oregon State University, so we're a branch campus, we're smaller. And at the moment, we just teach the first 2 years of the degree program here, and the first 2 years are taught at the community college across the street, and then we teach the upper 2 division levels. So at this point in time, we cannot offer too many scholarships to international students just because at the moment we just purchased some land, and so we're actually in the process of building a university. Right now we're following a 2+2 model where the students would take their first 2 years at a community college, which would be the equivalent of a polytech in New Zealand, and then they come across the street to us and do the final 2 years. So this one is a stay tuned for us. Next fall we aim to be breaking ground and building buildings to start a 4-year university. So international scholarships for us at the moment are still quite limited, but that could change within 9 months.
Got it. We'll stay tuned for that one. Thank you for your answers. We have another question from Molly, who's wondering how much extra time would it take to add a major or minor in business as a supplement?
Well, ours, it will depend. All that information, at least for our program at SUNY Plattsburgh, that's available online. So you could look at our admissions. The easiest way probably would be to just contact myself directly, and we can email back and forth about what specific program. I think the question was about business as a double major. So each of those programs have a specific number of courses and set courses that they want students to take for their major. So it'll be different based on the institution and specific program. So the easiest way would be to contact myself or someone like myself or Michael, the department chair or head, and they'll be able to give you more of that information. We frequently, I don't know exactly in terms of percentage, but we have I don't know. I would guess it'd be around 15 to 20% of our Expeditionary Studies students are double majors, and then probably another double that of students that take minors as well.
Okay, great. We have another question from Ian on the call, who is wondering if you have any sporting programs at your schools. But on top of that, I wonder if you could describe your campus a little bit more for New Zealand students who may not be familiar with what an American university would be like and feel like, what classroom sizes would be. So here's your chance to sell it.
Sure. Well, one thing I will say is that we're on Instagram, and so if you go to SUNY Plattsburgh EXP, SUNY Plattsburgh EXP, you can find us on Instagram. We post pictures from our classes, and we'll have students take over and post their photos from their time, so you'll be able to have a good understanding of where we do class and what our program is like. We also have recently had a short documentary film made by one of our alumni about our program, and it's on Vimeo, and so you could search for SUNY Plattsburgh EXP, and you should be able to find us on Vimeo, and it's about a 15-minute documentary on what we do and where we do it, and so that would give you a pretty good understanding of it. To do a brief description of it now, we are a university of about 6,000 undergraduate students. So in my mind, that's kind of medium to small universities. And there are, I don't know, Raeann might be able to tell me, but many of those students either live on campus or they live in easy walking distance. So one of the things I like about our university is that there's lots of life on campus, and students are participating in events that are going on, and people walking back and forth between the different buildings, and so there's good community, and particularly within our program, because of our immersion semester, you're able to make friends quickly, and you have a group to connect with. We also, like many other American universities, have significant athletics programs. So hockey, ice hockey is one of the big sports here, but also basketball, field lacrosse, and some of the other winter sports. So you can check us out online. I could talk here, but if you want to look at the video, and you'll be able to find us out. Michael, your university is a little bit different.
Yeah, we're a little bit different. We are probably only about 1,000 students, so we're quite small. We are about 20 minutes from the mountains, so 20 minutes to skiing or snowboarding or whatever you like to do in that regard, winter sports. Our expeditions program, because we're so close to the mountains, our expedition course immersion term, we actually walk back to campus from the mountains. So we get, for example, that's how close they are. We're out in the mountains for 3 weeks, and then we walk back to campus. It's 2 or 3 days walk. So we're real close. We're real small. Students know each other in our program really well. We have about 70 majors in the tourism and outdoor leadership program. And I think the best thing about our university is it is small. You get to know your teachers really well. The students all know me on a first name basis, and I think Jerry's program is small enough where that happens also. We're a little bit entrepreneurial on the edge, as I said or alluded to earlier, because we're in the process of building a campus. Just purchased some land in town to build a university, so it's kind of an exciting place to be in that regard. There's lots of rivers nearby for whitewater boating and rafting. So we don't have the feel of an established 4-year self-contained university like Plattsburgh has, I would say. We're much more tied to a main campus, which is 4 hours drive on the other side of the mountains. But we have kind of almost an entrepreneurial, like keep coming back to that feel to it, where it's small, we're used to doing things on our own, and we're just kind of in the heart of a really nice outdoor environment.
Okay, great. It sounds so picturesque. You all are very lucky. We have one more question from a student on the call, and it's a great one, actually. She's wondering, do you need to buy your own gear?
Well, for our program, we have an extensive amount of outdoor equipment, and I'll let Michael speak in a minute to his program. Depending on what type of program that you go to, the answer is going to be different. For us in particular, we don't want the gear expense to be a barrier for our students on one hand. So we do everything we can to make sure that we cover some of the more expensive items like boats or even backcountry skis or ice climbing equipment, all the ropes and that sort of thing. So we cover that. On the other side of that is when students choose a discipline. So in our program, they choose a specific discipline that they want to focus on, and not that it's exclusive, but say they want to really go into pursue paddling or rock climbing. By the time they're a senior and they graduate, we expect them to have the amount of gear that would be comparable for a outdoor professional. So we feel we're doing them a disservice if they don't graduate with the ability to work in the field, and part of that is being able to train and to get out there on your own equipment. So we're very conscious of that cost, and we try and tier it in and make that information available up front. And I think it's a little bit by little bit is kind of our philosophy.
And Dr. Gassner, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, for our program, it's pretty much the same. It's, I would say, just ditto to that. There's an outdoor program on campus, kind of a student-run outdoor program, and a lot of students can they can borrow gear from there. It's not a everything you need kind of thing, but it certainly covers a lot of the expeditions, so they're free to borrow that anytime they want. And I would reemphasize what Jerry said too about when students graduate. Certainly from my perspective, whatever discipline they want to focus on, I would expect that they slowly over time accumulate that gear. It's the same thing if you're going to be a carpenter and you're trained to be a carpenter. When you get out of that training, you're expected to have a hammer and nails and whatever to do the job. So I think those are the expectations. We don't expect students to buy all the gear for multiple disciplines, but I think by the time they get out, they've already sorted out what they want to focus on, whether it's climbing, boating, or some other aspect of the outdoors, and they slowly accumulate that gear. So again, it's pretty much what Jerry said, slowly, and then there's an expectation to have the skills and the equipment to go out and work after you're done.
All right, that sounds like a good response for all of us. Now, for everyone on the call, you should see a new window that's popped up with some of the links to both SUNY Plattsburgh and OSUCascades that will help you to get a better feel for each school. So feel free to click and do some extra research after this webinar today. At this stage, we'll have to wrap up the call, but I want to say thank you so much to Professor Isaak, Dr. Gassner, and our international admissions expert, Ms. Halley, for joining us today. It's been wonderful. We know that a few of you had to work late in order to join us on this webinar. So on behalf of New Zealand, we really appreciate that effort. If anyone does have further questions for our presenters today, please feel free to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to connect you if you have any specific sort of questions. Also keep in mind that if you have any questions about the admissions process or general study in America, I'm happy to help. Although I'm based in Auckland, I work my way around the country visiting schools and advising students. So make sure you follow Education USA New Zealand on social media to find out when we'll be visiting a town near you. We're also happy to do Skype appointments if you have questions as well. So thanks for joining, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.